The winter wind howling off Lake Superior was relentless, driving thick sheets of snow against the heavy pine logs of the solitary cabin. Perched high on a secluded hill overlooking the frozen expanse of Duluth, Minnesota, the rustic home looked like a picture postcard of winter serenity. Inside, the air was warm, smelling of burning birchwood and freshly brewed black tea. Raymond Fletcher, a 67-year-old retired search and rescue ranger, sat by the stone fireplace. He was a tall, broad-shouldered man with hands calloused from decades of handling ropes, axes, and frozen timber. His sharp blue eyes, though framed by deep weathered wrinkles, held the steady, unblinking focus of an apex predator. Raymond was a man of few words. After his wife passed away, he had retreated to this hillside sanctuary, content with his quiet routine of chopping wood, checking trail cameras, and maintaining the $3 million forest estate he had spent a lifetime protecting. He lived modestly, but his land was the most valuable undeveloped timber property in the county. To Raymond, it was a sanctuary. To others, it was a gold mine waiting to be stripped. The heavy silence of the evening was broken by the distant, straining roar of an engine climbing the steep, icy driveway. Raymond didn't get up. He simply turned his head toward the window, watching a sleek, expensive black SUV navigate the snowdrifts. The heavy timber door opened, letting in a blast of sub-zero air and two people wrapped in thick, high-end city parkas. It was Caleb, Raymond's youngest son, and his wife, Victoria. Caleb had always been a climber, always looking for the next big real estate play in Minneapolis, always dressed in clothes he couldn't afford. But tonight, beneath his confident swagger, Caleb's eyes were bloodshot and frantic. Victoria walked in behind him, her eyes instantly darting around the cabin, cataloging the antique furniture and the hand-carved cedar beams with a cold, calculating greed. "Dad," Caleb called out, shaking the snow from his boots with an exaggerated laugh. "Look at you, sitting here in the dark. We couldn't bear the thought of you being snowed in all by yourself for the holidays. We decided to come up for a few weeks to help you clear the drifts and keep the woodpile stacked." "We were so worried, Raymond," Victoria added, her voice dripping with a sweet, artificial warmth as she rushed over to hang up her coat. "An old man living all the way up on this ridge. It's simply dangerous. We're here to take the pressure off your shoulders." Raymond slowly stood up, his massive frame towering over them in the firelight. He looked at his son's trembling hands and the way Victoria avoided direct eye contact. He knew Caleb had lost his shirt in a massive commercial development failure downtown last month. His private sources in the county office had already warned him that Caleb's creditors were circling. "The snow is barely 6 inches deep, Caleb," Raymond said, his deep, resonant voice completely calm and level. "And my woodpile is stacked for the next 3 winters. But since you've driven all this way in a blizzard, you might as well take off your coats. I've just brewed a fresh pot of tea." "Perfect, Dad," Caleb said, exchanging a quick, tense look with Victoria. "Let's get warm. We have a lot of important things to discuss about the future of this property." Raymond walked toward the kitchen to fetch more cups. He didn't say a word, but as he crossed the threshold, his eyes narrowed. The wolves were at his door, disguised as family. But they had forgotten one simple rule: you do not try to hunt an old ranger on his own mountain. The kitchen of the log cabin was rustic, dominated by heavy oak countertops and a copper kettle that hummed quietly on the cast iron stove. Raymond stood with his back to the door, slowly reaching for 2 ceramic mugs from the upper shelf. Decades of working search and rescue operations in sub-zero blizzards had sharpened his senses to a razor's edge. He could read the subtle shifts in a room's atmosphere the same way he read incoming storm fronts on the mountain. Behind him, in the living room, The low, urgent whispering of his son and daughter-in-law suddenly ceased the moment his heavy boots stepped onto the linoleum kitchen floor. "Let me help you with that, Raymond," Victoria said, her voice floating into the kitchen a split second before she appeared in the doorway. She was already rolling up the sleeves of her expensive cashmere sweater, her face tight with a helpful, energetic smile that didn't reach her cold eyes. "You've been on your feet all day. Go sit by the fire with Caleb. I'll bring the tea tray out." "I can manage, Victoria," Raymond replied, his voice a low, gravelly rumble. "Nonsense," Victoria insisted, gently but firmly stepping between Raymond and the stove. She took the wooden tray from his hands. "You retired so you wouldn't have to play host anymore. Go. Let a daughter-in-law pamper you for once." Raymond didn't argue. He gave a slow, single nod, his sharp blue eyes lingering for a fraction of a second on the oversized, structured leather handbag Victoria had placed on the corner of the kitchen counter. The brass zipper was half open, revealing a small, amber glass dropper bottle tucked inside a side compartment. He quietly stepped out of the kitchen, his boots making no sound on the heavy wool rug of the living room hallway. Instead of sitting down with Caleb, Raymond stopped just behind the shadow of the pantry door, angling his head to catch the reflection in the polished copper pots hanging on the kitchen wall. Through the reflection, he watched Victoria. The helpful, smiling daughter-in-law vanished the instant his back was turned. Her movements became frantic and precise. She reached into her handbag, unscrewed the amber dropper bottle, and squeezed 3 drops of a clear, odorless liquid directly into the steaming teapot. She stirred the brew quickly with a silver spoon, wiped the rim with a napkin, and slid the dropper bottle back into her purse. A cold, familiar calm settled over Raymond's chest. He didn't feel sadness, nor did he feel fear. In the wilderness, when a predator marks its territory, it doesn't hesitate. It acts. He recognized the pattern instantly. It was a classic pharmaceutical sedative, a compound designed to cause severe lethargy, short-term memory confusion, and a simulated state of advanced cognitive decline. Raymond quietly slid into the leather armchair opposite Caleb, just as Victoria emerged from the kitchen, balancing the wooden tea tray with practiced grace. "Here we go," Victoria chirped, pouring the dark, steaming amber liquid into 3 identical mugs. She handed one directly to Raymond, her eyes locked onto his face, tracking his movements with a hungry, desperate intensity. "Drink up, Raymond. It'll take the chill right out of your bones." Caleb took his mug, his knuckles turning white as he gripped the ceramic handle. "Yeah, Dad. Drink up. We really need to talk about the future of this timber estate. The tax assessments are coming up, and with your memory getting a bit foggy lately, Victoria, and I think it's best we start organizing the paperwork for you." Raymond looked down at the dark tea. He brought the mug close to his face, letting the steam rise. His highly trained senses picked up a tiny, chemical bitterness beneath the rich scent of the birchwood tea. He looked at Caleb, then at Victoria, both of them leaning forward in their chairs, holding their breath, waiting for him to take the first fatal sip. With a slow, heavy sigh, Raymond placed the mug back down on the wooden side table, untouched. "I think I'll let it cool down first," Raymond murmured, rubbing his temples as if suddenly hit by a wave of exhaustion. "My chest feels a bit tight tonight. I might need to step outside for some fresh air in a moment." Victoria's smile stiffened, a flicker of raw, volatile panic crossing her features. "Oh, don't let it get cold, Raymond. You need your strength. Just take a few sips." "In a minute," Raymond said, his voice dropping into a flat, icy register that made Caleb flinch. "In a minute." Raymond let his head slump forward slightly, letting his eyes half close. He gave a soft, raspy sigh, perfectly mimicking the heavy, sudden fatigue of an elderly man succumbing to exhaustion. "You know," Raymond mumbled, his voice trailing off weakly. Maybe you're right, Caleb. I am so tired these days. The mountain gets so heavy in the winter. Caleb's posture relaxed instantly, a wave of relief washing over his tense shoulders. He leaned back, shooting Victoria a triumphant, greedy smirk. It's okay, Dad, Caleb said, his voice dripping with false comfort. That's why we're here. Why don't you close your eyes for a bit? Victoria and I will tidy up the kitchen. Yes, go on and rest, Raymond, Victoria urged, her eyes locked on the untouched mug on the side table. We'll be right here. Raymond let out a soft, rhythmic snore, keeping his body completely loose. He listened intently as the two of them stood up, their footsteps fading down the hallway toward the guest bedroom upstairs, to retrieve their suitcases. The moment the bedroom door clicked shut on the second floor, Raymond's eyes snapped open. The vacant, tired expression vanished, replaced by a freezing, calculated focus. He stood up silently, his boots making no sound on the hardwood floor. He picked up his mug of poisoned tea and carried it swiftly into his private study. From a locked drawer beneath his desk, Raymond pulled out a clean, medical-grade plastic specimen vial, a tool he had kept from his search and rescue days for collecting water and chemical samples in the field. Using a small funnel, he carefully poured the dark amber liquid into the vial. Sealing the airtight cap with a firm twist, he slipped the vial deep into the inner pocket of his heavy canvas work vest. He then took a bottle of regular, leftover black tea from the small mini fridge in his study, poured a matching amount into his ceramic mug, and placed the mug back on the side table by his armchair. Returning to his chair, Raymond pulled out his satellite phone. In these remote mountain ridges, cellular service was practically non-existent during winter storms, but his rugged, military-grade satellite device bypassed the local towers entirely. He dialed a secure number. Fletcher, a gruff voice answered on the second ring. It was Sheriff Thomas Higgins, Raymond's closest friend and a fellow veteran who ran the county precinct down in the valley. "Tom, it's Raymond," he whispered, his eyes scanning the staircase. "The wolves are inside the cabin. My daughter-in-law just spiked my tea with a chemical sedative. I've secured a pristine liquid sample for the lab." Higgins swore softly under his breath. "Are you all right, Raymond? Do you need me to dispatch a cruiser up the ridge right now?" "No," Raymond replied, his voice a cold, hard block of ice. "The storm is getting worse, and they'll see the headlights coming up the winding road from miles away. They'll flush the evidence down the drain before you reach the porch. I want them caught red-handed. I need you to have a forensic unit ready to test this vial the second I bring it down, and prepare a criminal warrant for elder abuse and attempted chemical assault. I'll have the lab tech on standby at the county line," Higgins confirmed. "But Raymond, be careful. If they realize you know, they might get desperate." "They won't realize a thing," Raymond said, his jaw tightening. "They think they're dealing with a helpless old man. I'm going to let them play their hand." He slipped the satellite phone back into his pocket, just as he heard the upstairs bedroom door creak open. He quickly sank back into his armchair, letting his body go limp, his head tilting back against the worn leather, as the sound of Caleb and Victoria's whispering voices began to descend the stairs. Caleb and Victoria stepped back into the living room, carrying a thick leather folio. The blizzard outside battered the cabin walls, but inside, the atmosphere was suffocatingly hot. Seeing Raymond slumped in his chair with his eyes closed, Victoria tapped Caleb's arm and nodded toward the ceramic mug. The dark tea was half empty. "Dad? Dad, wake up," Caleb whispered, shaking Raymond's shoulder. His touch was hesitant, but his eyes were wide with a frantic, desperate hunger. Raymond let his eyelids flutter open slowly. He groaned, rubbing his face with a trembling hand, perfectly mimicking the disoriented, sluggish state of someone under a heavy sedative. "Caleb! What time is it?" The room is spinning a bit. "It's just past 10, Dad," Victoria said, stepping forward with a sharp, triumphant grin. She opened the leather folio and placed a set of white documents directly onto Raymond's lap, unscrewing the cap of a heavy gold pen. "You've had a really rough winter. We were just talking, and we think it's time we take the burden of this timber estate off your hands. It's too much stress for you." Raymond blinked slowly at the paperwork. The bold heading at the top of the page read, "Irrevocable power of attorney and immediate transfer of property rights." If he signed this, the $3 million forest reserve would be legally transferred to Caleb's failing development firm by sunrise. They would bulldoze his sanctuary, sell off the ancient timber, and leave him with nothing. "My land?" Raymond mumbled, his voice weak and slurred. "My trees. Your mother loved this forest, Caleb. We can't sell it." "We aren't selling it, Dad," Caleb lied, his voice rising in an anxious, high-pitched pitch. He grabbed Raymond's hand, trying to force the gold pen between his calloused fingers. "We're just protecting it. You're losing your memory, Dad. You almost let the pipes freeze last month. The county is going to seize the land if you don't let us manage it. Just sign right here, right at the bottom." "Just sign it, Raymond," Victoria urged, her sweet persona completely evaporating, replaced by a cold, commanding sneer. She leaned over his chair, her breath hot on his face. "Sign the paper. Let us take care of you. You don't want to end up in a state asylum, do you?" Raymond looked at his son. He saw the utter lack of remorse in Caleb's eyes. This boy, the son he had carried on his shoulders through these very woods, was willing to poison him and steal his life's work just to pay off his own reckless corporate debts. With a heavy, simulated sigh, Raymond gripped the gold pen. He brought the tip down to the signature line, holding it there for agonizingly long 3 seconds. He watched Victoria's face tighten with manic, breathless excitement. Then, Raymond let the pen slip from his fingers. It rolled off the paper and clattered onto the hardwood floor. "I can't," Raymond whispered, leaning back and closing his eyes. "My hand. It won't stop shaking. I need my medication from the truck." In the glove compartment, Victoria let out a sharp, frustrated hiss. She snatched the documents from his lap. "Where are the keys, Raymond? Where are the keys to the truck?" In my vest," Raymond mumbled, his head rolling to the side. "The heavy green one. In the mudroom." Caleb stood up quickly, his face pale. "I'll get them. Victoria, keep him awake. Don't let him drift off until we get that signature." As Caleb rushed toward the mudroom, Raymond's eyes opened slightly. Through the slit, he watched Victoria pace back and forth, her fingers frantically typing a text message on her phone. "We have him. He's signing tonight. Get the wire transfer ready." They had played their hand. Now, it was time for the ranger to spring the trap. The mudroom door banged open as Caleb searched frantically through the pockets of Raymond's heavy green work vest hanging on the wall. "I can't find them, Victoria," Caleb yelled back, his voice cracked with a volatile mix of greed and panic. "There are no keys in this damn vest." Inside the living room, Victoria turned back toward Raymond, her face contorted with anger. "Raymond, stop playing games. Where are the keys to the truck?" Raymond did not answer. Slowly, the slumped, weak posture of the poisoned old man began to vanish. He sat up straight in the leather armchair, his broad shoulders squaring as his spine snapped into a firm, military posture. The simulated glaze over his sharp blue eyes evaporated, replaced by a freezing, predatory clarity that made Victoria freeze mid-step. Raymond reached into the side pocket of his wool cardigan, pulled out a heavy brass ring of keys, and tossed them flat onto the mahogany side table. The heavy metallic clink echoed loudly in the quiet cabin. "They were in my pocket the entire time, Victoria," Raymond said. His voice was no longer a weak, slurred whisper. It was a deep, resonant rumble that carried the absolute, commanding authority of a veteran ranger. Victoria took a sharp step back, her jaw dropping as she stared at him. You drank the tea. I watched you." "I spent 30 years tracking predators in these mountains, Victoria," Raymond said, slowly rising from his chair. His towering, 6'3" frame cast a long, intimidating shadow over her. "I know the smell of chemical solvent. And I certainly know when someone is trying to poison me under my own roof." At that moment, Caleb rushed back into the living room, his face pale and sweating. He stopped dead in his tracks as he saw his father standing tall, looking down at Victoria with an expression of freezing, clinical disgust. "Dad?" Caleb stammered, his eyes darting from Raymond to the half-empty tea mug on the table. "What's going on? You're supposed to be..." "Supposed to be what, Caleb?" "Unconscious?" Raymond asked, his voice dripping with ice. "Supposed to be low enough to sign over Eleanor's forest, so you can pay off your offshore real estate debts." Caleb's face drained of what little color it had left. How do you know about that?" "Because I am not the blind, broken old man you thought I was," Raymond said, stepping around the table. He reached into his canvas vest and pulled out the sealed medical vial containing the poison tea, along with his rugged satellite phone. "I've already recorded your entire conversation upstairs on my secure cloud drive, and this vial is going straight to the county forensic lab." Victoria's eyes flared with a desperate, manic rage. She lunged toward the table, trying to snatch the documents and her leather handbag. "You have nothing, old man. It's our word against yours. This is a civil dispute. You can't prove a thing." "I don't have to," Raymond said calmly. He tapped the screen of his satellite phone, turning on the speaker. The voice of Sheriff Thomas Higgins blasted through the room, clear and loud despite the howling blizzard outside. "Raymond, we've got the GPS signal from your phone. My deputies have already bypassed the snow drifts at the base of the ridge. We are entering your property line now. Keep the target secured." Caleb looked out the frosted window in sheer panic. Through the thick, falling snow, the brilliant red and blue tactical lights of 3 county cruisers were already winding their way up the steep hillside, their sirens echoing like a death knell through the silent pine forest. The blinding red and blue lights of the sheriff's cruisers fractured the darkness of the snowstorm, painting the pine logs of the cabin in violent, rhythmic strokes. The howling of the blizzard was suddenly drowned out by the thud of heavy tactical boots stomping onto the wooden porch. "Step away from the table. Keep your hands where I can see them." The heavy timber door was thrown open, and 3 armed deputies, led by Sheriff Thomas Higgins, flooded the warm living room. Cold winter wind and a flurry of snow swirled inside, instantly freezing the tense air. Caleb collapsed back against the wall, his hands raised in a trembling, pathetic surrender. Victoria, however, let out a hysterical shriek, desperately trying to shove the legal documents into her designer handbag. "She's hiding the papers, deputy," Raymond said, his voice flat and completely steady as he pointed a calloused finger toward his daughter-in-law. "And her purse contains the amber dropper bottle she used to spike my drink." A female deputy stepped forward, expertly twisting Victoria's arms behind her back and clicking a pair of heavy steel handcuffs around her wrists. With a swift movement, the deputy snatched the leather handbag, unzipping the side pocket to reveal the small glass vial. "We have the chemical compound, Sheriff," the deputy reported, sealing the bottle in a plastic evidence bag. Sheriff Higgins stepped up to Caleb, his face hardened with disgust as he read him his Miranda rights. "Caleb Fletcher, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit grand larceny, felony exploitation of an at-risk elder, and attempted chemical assault." "Dad, please, tell them it was a mistake," Caleb sobbed, his knees buckling as the handcuffs locked around his wrists. He looked at Raymond with wide, terrified eyes. "I'm your son. You can't do this to me. The developers, they'll ruin me if I don't get the land." Raymond walked over to his son, his towering frame casting a long, heavy shadow over the crying young man. He looked down at him, not with anger, but with a cold, absolute finality that was far more terrifying. "You ceased being my son the moment you put poison in my cup, Caleb," Raymond said, his gravelly voice echoing in the quiet room. "I spent my life saving people on this mountain. But some people are too lost to be saved." He turned his back on them, walking over to the fireplace as the deputies dragged the screaming, weeping couple out into the freezing Minnesota night. Raymond pulled the plastic specimen vial of poisoned tea from his vest and handed it to Sheriff Higgins. "For the lab, Tom. Make sure the state prosecutor gets everything they need." Higgins took the vial, placing a heavy hand on Raymond's shoulder. "They're going away for a very long time, Raymond. I'm sorry it had to end like this." "It didn't end tonight, Tom," Raymond said softly, staring into the crackling orange embers of the hearth. "It just went back to the way it was supposed to be. Quiet." As the sirens faded down the winding mountain road, Raymond picked up his mug of clean, hot black tea, took a slow sip, and let the deep, unshakable peace of his forest sanctuary wash over him once more. The wolves had been hunted, the